Hello. Hi, guys. It is good to see you again. Hopefully, everybody can see me and hear me and all of those good things. Okay. So, what we're going to talk about today is how to prepare for a. God, my water bottle's in shot here. You guys know that I have a red water bottle? I have a red water bottle. So, what we're going to talk about today is preparing for a role playing game, specifically around the kind of world building that you do and so on. Now, I put in the title specifically SWADE, but you can really apply this to anything. I am currently using SWADE, and I'll take you through my reasoning for it because I felt like it fit the concept of my campaign best. I've kind of run role playing in, oh my goodness, every single possible humanly system in the world. I have run Legend of the Five Rings in like 4 editions. I've run World of Darkness going back to first edition. I started playing D&D with AD&D and the glories of Thaco. So, I'm very system agnostic when it comes to role playing. I will like learn just about anything and adapt just about any game system. So I try and find a game system that matches what I am trying to do with the concept of the game, right? So that it kind of supports the game system from the bottom up, and I'm not fighting the system while trying to run the game as a concept. Um, so so that's why I picked Suede. So let me just tell you about the concept of the game. And hello everybody. Hello to Elizabeth and Necromancer JM, who are some of my members on here, and I see Carrie's here as well. And to everybody else who watches. All right, so I have got a little document I'm going to share. It's just a little Word document, so don't judge me. Um, Where's my Windows? There. It's currently called Document 1. And the reason why it's called Document 1 is because mm, my notes are generally taken in a OneNote, which is a tool as part of Microsoft Office. That's probably going to change, but I'll talk to you about that saga a little later. So generally, I take notes in OneNote, but OneNote presents really, really badly. So I copied the most pertinent bits of my crazy notes in here and cleaned them up a little. Okay, so what is the concept of um, what is the concept that I'm going with here? I am going with the same concept as the apocalypse idea that I shared in the last live stream, because I figured really good, like game actually. So let me just scroll up a little so my box isn't all over you. All right. So hello, Laura. Good to see you. Okay. So hello, Skillers. Of course, you can get a hello, and welcome. So the concept of this is basically that Cultural Revolution, humans had magic. The etheric veil, which was a lattice of raw mythic energy, and from it was birthed merfolk and Hydra and the witches and all of these. Um, and when the first witch wars threatened to let a single coven dominate the world, the Guardian Tepe performed the Great Binding, a blood ritual sacrifices that collapsed the veil into a dormant lattice beneath the earth and kind of softened this memory of magic. Okay, so people don't really remember, though it's still where our kind of legends come from. Um, hey, Bram, good to see you. Okay, so then 6, an archaeologist is busy doing excavations and whatnot, um, and I'm going to ignore what's going on in Iran for the purpose because I don't want to be that close to reality, and bleeds on the stone. And that results in magic, in that seal breaking and magic coming back. So the concept behind this game is very much like running Shadowrun, but instead of running Shadowrun, with the corporations and everybody's already kind of settled into the new world where there's magic and technology working against each other and working side by side. So instead of that, what you have the very beginning apocalypse. Okay. So you have dragons roaring over skyscrapers. You have out of the ocean, and you have ordinary people and animals who mutate into their mythic forms. And you suddenly have witches, mostly women, but there are some men as well. I'm not going to make this completely gender exclusive, who feel the veil surge through their veins and they become suddenly magical, capable of wielding magic. So that was my concept when I started, when I came up with this. They're interested in joining this concept. um, they said, I was like, okay, to use Shadowrun as the system. But the problem is, I don't know if any of you all have played Shadowrun, yeah, but it's a bit of a mess. The stream might be lagging, sharing, and hopefully that'll take some of the strain off it. I have been having internet issues all day. I'm sorry if I'm a little laggy. Um, I'm hoping it'll last at least for like a half an hour to an hour's worth of yapping. Um, so it's just been that kind of a day on my internet. I don't know why. Weather, you know. Um, so Shadowrun as a system is painful. Okay. So the problem with Shadowrun is that it creates, is that it has this very weird mechanical issues. Um, I have once tried to calculate with Shadowrun how fuel works, and and the freaking the jets had to refuel while flying. Lear jets had to refuel while flying from New York to Ottawa. That's not how a Learjet works, right? So Shadowrun as as a system doesn't work. Shadowrun as lore is beautiful. I love it. It has some of the system is Werbus put it very well in chat there. It's overdefined and its definition is not good. There's a lot of it that just doesn't work right. Okay, so I wanted that kind of Shadowrunny lore, but I didn't want to use the Shadowrun system. So I started investigating, and Elizabeth mentioned there that they switched to GURPS. And I considered GURPS because it is a flexible system. But then I went on a little journey of like exploring different role-playing options, because I mean GURPS is kind of an old game, and I was like, well, let me see what else is out there, especially what else is supported on Roll20. Because I am in Finland. I have 2 players in South Africa, and I have 2 players in the UK, right? So we run on a virtual desktop. There is no other option. I hope the lagginess has improved, by the way, with a lack of sharing. Please let me know if it's still laggy. I mean, I'm not sure that I can do anything about it, but at least I'll know. So I was going through all of the various new kind of systems and looking into what can be adapted into this concept of playing in the apocalypse where magic returns a la Shadowrun. And what I came up with was SWADE. Okay, so SWADE is not its proper name. Its proper name is um, Swash Savage Worlds Adventure Edition. And it is a lot of, and it is super adaptable. It's a lot like GURPS, but in that it's very adaptable, but it's easier to adapt. And it I don't actually like 5th edition Saint Sir Nicholas. I I just struggle. But the Savage World is very well supported on D20, on Roll20, and it is super, super adaptable. So it's got all of that, and that was very important to me. Okay. So how they work is basically you take any given template, you slap abilities onto it. In a way, it's a lot like GURPS. You slap abilities onto it, you slap edges onto it, you slap hindrances onto it, and you can make any monster that you want out of it. And more importantly, you can slap those templates onto players, right? Which is one of the reasons why I didn't per se want to use D&D, because slapping templates onto players is not necessarily that easy. Whereas let's say one of my players says, okay, they want to be a mythic creature like a mermaid or a dragon or whatever. Then A, I need to be able to help them do that. And B, I need to be able to do it in such a way that I don't entirely break the game balance, right? So if a player says they want the abilities of like a dragon or whatever, I need to like give it to them slowly or give them hindrances or stuff like that. So that was kind of my system thoughts around designing this game, is I needed a system that supports my mm, my need for this specific apocalypse driven game. Okay. So I think I should be able to start a poll and ask you guys, what system would you have used? And we'll go with D&D, SWADE, GURPS, Shadowrun. And you can let me know in the poll what you would have gone for. So we're there with SWADE. Now I'm actually planning for the campaign. So my decision overall was, where would my players start? Now, the thing about planning for a campaign and world building for a campaign, the biggest difference between planning for a campaign and planning for a story, right, or writing for a story, is you don't control the players. So you don't control the main characters. And because you don't control them, you also don't world build per se around them, right? You're creating a structure for other people to put their stories and their characters into. So because of that, I take the approach of planning the campaign almost from a villain's perspective, like what is going on in the world around them. And then I let my players interact with that world as they will. But I do normally define a starting point, right? So, because you've got to set some limits on a campaign. You can't just completely leave it blank canvas. No one has time for that. So my so I told my players, you are either on holiday somewhere, or you work in a hotel resort and so on. And the location that I picked for them was Corfu in Greece. Okay. So, and I didn't want any of them to be at their homes. So they're either there working, and traveling, or they're there on holiday or whatever the case is. And I picked Corfu because it's in a pretty location. It's in a central location quite close to Göbekli Tepe, in case they start pulling on threads to try and figure out what happened. And it is on an island, which presents its own kinds of challenges, right? Um, it contains the initial campaign a little bit, because in order to get off the island, the players are going to need a boat, or they're going to need, a plane or something like that, and that's going to be quite hard to come by with this apocalypse. Okay. So first, I looked at the broader world, right? What happens in the immediate aftermath of this? So if I go completely balls to the wall with this apocalypse, which is my plan, then I say, okay, we're going to have dragons rampaging around the countryside. We're going to have hydras. We're going to have all of these mythic monsters. Now, we have nation states that have armies. Okay. So some of the weapons will work just fine, right? A dragon might survive like a missile strike to the head, but I don't think a hydra necessarily will. So it's kind of different spheres of influence. But both of those will shrug and laugh at bullets. Okay. And there will suddenly be a lot of these creatures. So there's going to be some fundamental breakdown in governmental services, abilities, all of that kind of thing, right? And there's going to be sort of like martial law declared in some places, and some places the governments are just going to collapse and so on. Let me just check the chats quickly. So Laura says powered by the apocalypse might also have worked. I don't know that one. So far, the winner is Shadowrun itself with the poll. Wirbus says he'll start his campaign in his own setting. Yeah. Will you also have some animal with old blood, so you get a wolf that turns into a dire wolf or something like that? Yes, I absolutely plan on having animals who also transform into dire wolves. So suddenly you will have packs of dire wolves, and you'll have like kelpies, as there's some horses that transform into kelpie like mythic creatures and stuff like that. So there'll be all of the kind of mythic creatures running around and causing absolute havoc, drawn from both people transforming into them as well as animals transforming into those creatures. I'm also thinking that I'll probably put, a kraken or two in the ocean, because that's ideal in my opinion. Yeah, Wirbus, exactly. Corfu is my starting Pluto. It's a contained kind of place where the players can get used to the ideas and concepts. Saint St. Nicholas says, would you have mythic races like players becoming an Amazon or a Myrmidon? Yes. I will give my players that option, but I am, for various game balance reasons, I will restrict that a little bit, and say, okay, so if you're taking, let's say, this ability or that ability, then you're going to need to take hindrances, because that's how SWADE has got the system of hindrances and edges. So you can take hindrances and edges to kind of balance off. And so I'll be like, you can take these abilities like breath weapon and whatever and turn into, a draconic creature, but bear in mind that that's going to come with like downsides. I'll probably forbid outright dragons. Like there's limits, but I will certainly allow them to take mythic races like trolls and whatever, because I think that would be great. Laura's like, she's imagining a horse being like, I'm a unicorn now. Yeah, I think that would be amazing. I'm definitely going to build in a couple of unicorn horses. So, so that'll work well. No, I'll absolutely allow mythic races. Um, Saint Sir Nicholas. I think that'll be fantastic. So, and a lot of those will just be a case of like figuring out the abilities that I then give those races, you know? Um, so yeah, so Necromancer, to get this back to like the fallout from this event, some of these mythic races will team up with their governments. Heck, some of the governmental heads, some of the government people will transform into some of these mythic creatures, and they will set up safe areas, right? So there will be kind of like this patchwork across the world of different places coping in different ways. In some places, the government will reestablish some kind of order, right? In some places, it'll become chaotic and lawless. In some places, there'll be some kind of mythic creature who takes over entirely. So it's all going to be this different kind of like a patchwork of different kinds of apocalypse that'll slowly sort itself out. But game will start the night of the apocalypse. So the players will actually go through their transformation. And Corfu is going to be in one hecking bad situation because there's not a lot of Greek state infrastructure per se there, and there's like a cop shop and a couple of cops and whatever, but it's not like it's not like part of the mainland Greece where there's actual infrastructure. I mean, not to say there's not infrastructure. Obviously, there's infrastructure, but there's not mainland infrastructure. And so, one of the people that's going to transform on Corfu is going to be some kind of powerful mythic monster, and I'm going to make it like either it was previously an animal or it was like a human who's been bullied all his life, something like that. Somebody with a chip on their shoulder, and that'll then become like Corfu's permeating the countryside kind of thing, and give the players and give the players a thing to interact with and to kind of like interact with in terms of coping with the apocalypse and learning how everything works. So that's kind of my thought process in that initial game. Is like the contained situation on Corfu is to give Corfu um, a very bad mythic monster who's there, and then the players kind of like are coping with this. And apparently D&D is the winner over there, looks like. um, and and but what I'm also going to do in this is I'm going to start throwing out some additional threads to the players, right? Because I don't want to railroad them to any given area of the campaign, but I now have a kind of open world. But I also want to the way I run open worlds, and this is the way I also run Rogue Trader when I'm talked into running Rogue Trader in Warhammer, is I create little threads, right? That I kind of distribute to my players. I'm like, okay, guys, here's a little thread for you, and here's a little thread for you, here's a little thread for you. And then I wait to see which of these threads they pull on, and then I develop that into a campaign, right? So because I campaign plan the same way as I write. I do it just in time. I don't want to plan a whole campaign and then my players go, you know what, actually we're not gonna go talk to the dragon, we're gonna go booze up in the bar. And I'm like, okay, sure. You know? So, and then I'm trying to railroad them back into the campaign or whatever. So that's not what I like to do. So threads that I will put into play during their time while they're playing in the limited environment that I set up for the initial adventure. Okay, so the initial adventure is fine. That's planned. The world ends with a magic apocalypse. The world as we know it ends with the magic apocalypse. They're trapped on an island, on Corfu, and they have to deal with this mythic monster, right? In order to get off the island, in order to do anything, one way or another, they have to deal with that. Okay, so in there, I will put a thread that will tempt them to Göbekli Tepe if they want to go and explore, what happened. So maybe I'll put like a crazy person on the island, or I'll lean into like the Greek myths of like prophecy and whatever, and give somebody like the power of kind of prophecy and gods and all of that kind of craziness, and they can pull on that thread, and that'll give them like a riddle or a clue or something to go and explore in Göbekli Tepe's direction. I will also, because what I'm planning on doing is I'm planning on building in the other megalithic structures into this whole like ritual. So there's megalithic structures all over the world, right? So I'll just build all of them into this whole spell, and they've all been variously, decayed and eroded and so on across the world, and some of them are in better condition than others. But they're all kind of part of the ritual, and they will all react in different ways to the spells. Then what I'll do is I'll also put in a thread from like what's going on in Europe, right? So I'll have somebody come from the mainland and end up in Corfu and be able to kind of like tell them, okay, so there's this country that's kind of stable and this country that's completely fallen into chaos and so on. So I'll give them opportunities to start going in that direction, right? If they want to go and explore over there. And then I was thinking that I might do something different and interesting with Africa, right? So Egypt, Mesopotamia, that area there is like part of our oldest agricultural civilizations, the Middle East leading into Africa. And I thought it might be interesting to kind of make that like the source of some of the kind of like make it sort of like that the magic still supported agriculture a little bit. Like that's why people could more easily adapt to agriculture there, because the soil was richer and so on because of magic. And now that it's blasted through, it's created like this magic reaping field, that's now very fertile and living, and there's like all kinds of power coming out of it and beasts crawling out of it and so on. Um, and I was like, so I'll bring in somebody from there and give them that thread as well to pull on. So I'll give them like threads in three different directions, and then I'll see where they go. And you can see like my concepts are super vague at this point. There's like, okay, so you can go play geopolitical games over in Europe if that's your temptation. You can go play very magic games over in Egypt and Africa if that's your game. You can go investigate the source of the apocalypse over in Turkey if that's your game, over in Göbekli Tepe. So that's kind of my thought process behind setting up the rest of the campaign. And then once the players have actually like picked direction, I'll then plan that in detail. Be like, okay, so when I said you can go over there and play a magic rich campaign, what did I mean? um Saint Sir Nicholas says I don't think anybody has a moment of peace in this one, Wirbus. Saint Sir Nicholas says, can you play a normal person? Yes, you can. So you can play a person that is not transformed and that has not gotten magic, and that, it's just it's normal person. And what I will do is for if you want to play that as your concept, then you get additional points to spend on your hindrances and edges, right? So you can make yourself just a more accurate shot, if you're gonna go with guns or with like sword fighting or whatever you want to do with the character. Whatever skills you want to give the character, you can then make the character mundane better, um, so that they can still, be part of the party and still feel like a contributing murder hobo of the overall party. Because you know I know at least one player who absolutely would want to play a mundane human because she loves playing like the underdog with a chip on the shoulder, right? And she will hammer her own stats and make herself like completely useless at this thing in order to be able to play this character over here because she really, really loves playing that kind of character. So, um, I'm not gonna stop anybody playing a mundane human if they have a concept for that they wanna run with. I'll enable that with, like, hindrances and edges and whatever to make them still be contributable. Um, um, yeah, so for I know, Gary, we've all been D&D murder hobos. It's, yeah. Yeah, the underdog is fun to play. It's a like as I say, I know one player character who thrives off that kind of character. So I would absolutely allow that. So, um for those of you who come late, we're talking about my SWADE game, which is basically going to be a setup of the world ends the world as we know it ends because magic returns overnight. That means mythic monsters return, magic returns, the whole freaking shebang, right? The player characters start on an island, the Greek island of Corfu, and they have to deal with the situation there before they expand outward. Now, just as a recap to anybody who's missed the start of this. Um, so, one of the things that I was thinking about is what realistically would happen to the nation state, right? So, if we think of the nation state concept, because this is important, right? And the reason why it's important is because the nation state offers infrastructure to the world, right? So it's infrastructure my players will interact with. Like they will interact with NPCs who are cops. But what happens when there are no more cops? That kind of thing. That's the kind of like concept that becomes very interesting. And indeed, when I was preparing for the first adventure. Maybe I should talk about that first. Okay, when I was preparing for the first adventure, one of the things that I did was I put together the NPCs that my players can interact with. Now, I have learned about putting together NPCs. There are a couple of important things you need to know. One, you need a name. Okay. Making up a name in the middle of a sentence is a pain in the ass. What I tend to do if I'm stuck without a name and I've just made up the NPCs, I look up at my bookshelf and I pick a random book title, and that then becomes the NPC's name. But that doesn't always work that well. So, make sure you name your NPCs. Then, um, you need a motivation. What does that NPC want? Right? You have to know that about that NPC in order to make them act correctly. Um, and then, how do they feel about the player characters? Before they interact with them, before the players do anything, are they annoyed by them? Do they support them? Are they helpful? Kind of what is their thing? And once you have those, you're you're pretty settled. So I went with there's going to be a person at the hotel who one person at the hotel, the head of guest services, will develop mythic um, mythic abilities, and they'll be able to sort of help the players kind of corral the hotel and keep the guests safe if that's what the players get interested in. There'll be a nun at the hotel who will develop magic because that just amused me. And then on Corfu, there will be a policeman, a cop, who will not develop power. So he will be a mundane human trying to kind of contain a suddenly mythic, magical situation, which is, I think, going to be both funny, and it means that the players cannot depend in any way on the resources of the state because he's going to be overmatched by what's going on. Um, so that's kind of the mainline NPCs that I developed, and everything else I'll just have like 5 or 10 names on the side, and as players interact with things, I will match a name with an NPC and and run the NPC. I'm very fast and loose with that kind of planning. Um, Elizabeth says that's going to get very messy given that some nation states are very homogenous and other. Yes. So the nation states thing is going to be a mess. There's going like it's really interesting to work through in your head, like what would it look like? I think, for example, in the United States, I don't think that the actual federal government would survive. I think the federal government of the United States would fall apart, and I think you would have different states asserting control. The same in Canada, because I think they're both just too big, to maintain control. Like I think all of the big states are gonna fall apart. Russia as well, China as well, because it's just too much ground with so much chaos going on. You're gonna have to withdraw to smaller, controllable areas, right? Because some of these creatures are immune to your technology. Um, so you can't just enforce your will in the kind of normal nation state way. So I think there's going to be a return to city states and smaller areas. Yeah, that's what I mean, Gary. Is Texas would survive, but I don't think the United States federal government would survive. Like I don't think that it'll survive as an entity. I also don't think the European Union will survive as an entity because I think anything that is so dispersed and so in need of the kind of social contract to survive just is not going to cope with a sudden return to the world of like dragons and magic and Hydra and all of those, crazy people. Um, so so that would be my general take on it. So I think what I will probably do if my players head into Europe and start pulling on the kind of the geopolitical threads is I'll go back to like city states for the most part. And some city states will project a little bit, but mostly it'll be like so there'll be like a Roman city state controlled by someone and like a Barcelona city state controlled by someone, and the Catalonians will finally split off from the rest of Spain, and so you like that kind of concept. Some of the countries might stay a little bit more together. Like I could see Finland to some extent, maybe, but that's only because there's nobody in the north. Like it's like, yeah, Alaska, might still be kind of like together. There's nobody there. So that would be interesting from a nation state perspective. Then in terms of like Göbekli Tepe and what's happened and the various like megaliths, if the Greek city-states do indeed go burst, Saint Sir Nicholas, that's exactly what happens there. What I think would happen in terms of the like threads of the what actually happened with the apocalypse is I think there will be mythic creatures that will be drawn to those megaliths. So I think if the players go there, if they start investigating what actually caused the apocalypse, there will be creatures there who are drawn to it. I think there might also be, I think I might throw in a secret society. That feels like the right thing to do. A secret society who gets the um who's trying to restore the seal, who knew about the seal all along. It's been this secret spoken quietly from human to human over the course of 13,000 years of broken telephone, and nobody believed it anymore, but here we now are, and they are trying to restore the veil. And the players can then either help them or prevent them or so on, and then I could have like monsters or like mythic creatures who are very anti the veil being restored, so they can be like a whole like little um uh interaction and politics around um control of the megaliths. So if the players start pulling on that thread, I think that's what I'll do. I'll make that campaign a very spy versus spy game where, you're working with like secret societies and people preventing them and people with duplicitous goals and all that kind of thing. So that would be the that part of the campaign. So we have the geopolitical part over in Europe, and we have the secret societies, spy versus spy with Göbekli Tepe. And then well, it is a little bit of Call of Cthulhu, Wirbis, not super Call of Cthulhu, but it is somewhat Call of Cthulhu. And then the mystical campaign on the African side, there I think would be a case of like exploring your powers and playing against the environment, like battling against monsters and trying to kind of carve out a space in the wilderness and help people, maybe like that kind of like almost a questing style of game. And yeah, I could add in Africa, there could be like a means to stabilize the veil and to like use it to, ward off monsters and things like that. And that could all be there on the African side. So you've got these three like different threads that the players can go and tug on. And then once they decide, so what I normally do when we reach a decision game, when I've like they've played out whatever's going on the island, they've gotten either control of it or they've managed to procure the means to get off the island, because that's kind of the thing, right? They either need to get off the island or they need to control the island. So, and that means either getting a boat or stealing a plane or something like that, because there's not going to be any infrastructure. So it's going to be up to them to kind of find a way off or to take control of the island. So once that's happened, I'll say to them, okay, which course of action you're going to pursue? Are you going to follow the clues that lead you to Africa, the clues that lead you to Göbekli Tepe, or the clues that lead you to Europe? And then I will call game, right? Once they've told me their decision, I'll be like, great, here's your award, and I'm going to call game there. Because for the next week, I will then be building out that thread of the campaign in much more detail. So, if they go to Göbekli Tepe, I'll start building out NPCs for like secret societies and setting spy versus spy adventures, and all of that kind of like detail will start coming in. If they decide to go to Europe, I'll start building out like what these city states now look like and so on. And if they if they decide to go to Africa, I'll build out the magic and mystical side of the campaign and, like, what resources they can get there and what adventures turn up there and so on. So, it'll all kinda depend. All kind of depend on what the players do. So yeah. Whereas, yeah, I might Pegasus I might put some Pegasi on the island. That would be interesting. See if they can get themselves some Pegasi. Um, and yeah, so I don't know if there are any questions um, that you guys have about preparing for a game or world building for role playing. Um, when I build fully secondary worlds for role playing, which I have also done, you know, uh, I will tend to tell my players what cultures they're based on so that they at least have some kind of concept. Um, or I will just give them like I'll tell them like what they know about the canon. Fully secondary worlds, like completely custom built ones, are they require a chunk of work, right? Because you have to define the culture in enough detail that a player can draw up their character. So when you're doing that, when you're doing fully your own custom world, like fully custom, then you want to you're gonna want to give your players a handout or something like that. You don't have to give them a whole campaign manual, obviously. I mean, you know, um, but you are gonna need to give them a handout about like the cultures that are available to them to draw up their character with. You're gonna have to give them like the city that you're in. What do they know about it? How is it run? You know, where like how does the law work in case they break it, which they will, because players are murder hobos. um how do they make money in it, and all of those kinds of details. So when you're doing fully secondary world, you do need to build out some of those additional campaign details before you start playing. It's a lot easier if you're building on top of our world in some kind of urban fantasy. So the way that I just did here, when I run when I run not that, when I run like D&D or whatever, I do I do tend to lean on the published worlds quite often, and then just build my campaign on top of that. So I'll build like in Eberron or in I don't like the Forgotten Realms, but I have run campaigns there. And I don't like the realms just because they're so well documented and the gods are so freaking active. You know, like you turn around twice and there's Mistra talking to Elminster again. I also like, Hidden Sun, Dead Sun, the Psy setting. It's a beautiful setting. Oh, the psionic setting. Such a beautiful setting. Um, so, there's a lot of kind of published settings that are great fun to run in. Or you can, as I say, absolutely make up your own world. But just bear in mind that your players will need a little bit of hand-holding, to understand the world and the cultures and so on, that they're gonna draw on. And if you're going to invest in building your own fully secondary, um, campaign world, then I would make sure that you build it broad enough and wide enough that you can run campaigns in it for the next 20 years, okay? Because you are going to sink an awful lot of effort into that world, and you're not gonna want to run just one campaign in it. So, make sure that you leave lots of open spaces and open threads where, like, weirdness can happen, 'cause, you kind of fill in the map as the players explore in different places. Dark Sun, that's the one, Wirbus. It is so good. I love Dark Sun. Such a great setting. Um, so, yeah. Yeah, urban fantasy is an easy start for role playing because the your barrier to entry is much less. Like people have a clear understanding of the world as it is now, and then you say, okay, now just add this. Like if you're playing in the Weird West, okay, it's like the mythological Wild West. Now add magical weirdness, that kind of thing. It makes it like easy to get into. So, yeah, um, I've never built my own like fully secondary long-term RPG world, except for the LARP, which I ran, Tales of Tiana. So with a couple of friends, we built a massive secondary world to run a live action role-playing campaign in, and we ran games in there for 6 years, something like that. It was great. It was amazing. And it had like a little campaign booklet with the cultures and all that kind of thing, and it was really fantastic. But um, that was a commitment to like running games for like 6 years. So, all right, guys, it's been um, yeah, realistic names are easier the more modern it gets. Yeah, you can call somebody Jake, or Bob or whatever, and nobody cares. Um, Guys, it's been a pleasure. I hope that you enjoyed this stream. I don't know when the next stream will be. I, in case I don't know if I've said this in public yet. My dishwasher leaked. My dishwasher pipe leaked. And this does not sound like a big disaster, I'm sure, but the problem is that it leaked quietly in private and secretly for months. And it got my floor of my kitchen wet. And I live in Finland, and the foundations ain't gonna dry themselves. We're not warm enough for that. So for 2 months, I have to move out of my house, and they are going to be moving in big industrial floor dryers that are gonna dry my kitchen floor. So, so it's gonna be bananas. I don't know. Like I've insurance thankfully is paying for like accommodation and so on. So which I'm very grateful. I've got insurance that covers that. So I'm going to live in an Airbnb for the next 2 months. So it's not like as bad as it could be, but still it's like a much smaller space. It's about half the size of my house. And I don't know whether I'll be able to stream. So, you know. But I will. I've uploaded a whole bunch of videos that'll cover the next month, and then I'm busy working on. Oh, here we go. Here's some good news to go on top of that bad news. Um, I'm busy working on a whole series on knights. So I made a video about honorable warriors, and that will be coming out in about 2 weeks. So where does honor codes come from and why did they develop and all of those kinds of details. But that didn't cover knights specifically. And so I'll be doing specifically the honor. I'll be doing a series about knights. I will do their history. I will do their equipment. I will do great knights of the past. I will do how you adapt them for fantasy, the impact of magic, the impact of non-human races, all of that stuff. So it's going to be like a chunky series that'll cover knights in all forms, flavors, and sizes. And I'll also do, as part of that, I'll do an episode of like, um, non-European equivalent. So like, how does a jaguar warrior from South America fit? Because that's kind of the same kind of niche as a knight within a society. Um, and how do the Polynesian warriors fit? How does the samurai fit? All of these kind of different warrior types. So I'll do a video of like the knight concept, not that they are knights, but that they fill that niche in society, and how they work around the world. So would an Aztec skull knight count? I am gonna have to go research that, Saint Sir Nicholas, because I would actually have to look that up. My problem with South America, and as I keep telling the people who ask me, like, "Won't you make a video about drawing from South America cultures?" It is really hard to find really good information about South America, right? Um, because the language is difficult, part of it is unencoded, a lot of the knowledge was lost during the colonization period, like, it's really hard to find good information. So I am still working on my South American knowledge and especially my Polynesian knowledge. But, like, I'm gonna have to look up Aztec skull knights to make sure I know whether I'm saying yes or no. So yeah, so that's what I'm working on. I'm researching for this night series, and I will film that probably while I am in this, not my house location. So you will have that to look forward to in due course. Yeah, thank you, Gary, and thank you everyone who, said good luck and so on. It is a pain in the ass. But it is, life is like that sometimes. So we soldier on because what else can we do? It could be worse. There is that. Yeah, that is the problem, Wirbis, is there are sources there are sources on South America, but some of it was like, I mean, you can't fully trust like all of the sources. So, um, yeah. Yeah, I will, Saint Sir Nicholas. It's just there's that, like, they know how to do this. They'll strip the floor and then they'll dry it and then they'll replace the floor. My house is built out of wood as well. So I mean it's not like a brick kind of process. So it's drywalling and all of that. So yeah. Um Thank you all of you for hanging out with me. I hope the stream wasn't too laggy. And yeah, I will see you again. Although I won't say I'll definitely see you next month because, I might not be able to stream next month. I'll see how it goes in the new place and how my internet there is and so on. So, yeah. Which is not to say that I will be completely off YouTube, just, I might not be able to live stream. Okay. Thanks, guys. Chat soon.